right, there we go. I'm so excited to kick off the speaker series. Today's guest is somebody who I met in passing at a conference and then just looked into his backstory and was like, this guy is so inspirational. And I really think it'd be such a great way to motivate teachers and students. And so today we have Christopher Phelps on the show, and I'm so excited to dive deeper, learn more about your work and the passion that you have for financial literacy. So welcome to the speaker series, Christopher. How are you?
Life is good, Yaneli. Life is good. Can't complain. And it was definitely a pleasure. It was random meeting you the way we did at FinCom, but life is good. I can't complain. And thank you for inviting me, everybody, to this. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So, yeah.
Yeah. So funny story. We were both at a financial conference for content creators who focus on financial content, and walking over to one of the mixers after the sessions, we were just in passing on the street. We end up in the same group. And then we started talking. You told me about your work with, Financipation. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So I'm glad we connected, because I think that the work you're doing is really motivating for so many students and for so many teachers and educators, but in particular for young Black men who are looking for role models in this day and age that are really talking about this, talking about financial betterment, talking about wealth building, right? And being those types of role models. So let's go back a little bit before we talk about your work with Financipation and some of the projects that you're working on. Tell us a little bit about growing up, your backstory, kind of what got you to where you are today.
Got you. So I would say, first and foremost, I grew up in a military household. It's a very strict household. My mother and my father met in the U.S. Army. My mother was actually a drill sergeant, and she was actually the loving parent. My father was a disciplinarian. That tells you how strict my household was. So I grew up playing sports. I lived in Korea. I lived overseas. And my parents always pushed pretty much three things. They pushed having a relationship with God, they pushed working out and constantly being in shape, and they pushed making good grades. So my financial journey started because, more or less, even though both my parents were in the military, some things happened, and I grew up more or less lower middle class. But growing up, I remember my grandparents always to some extent had money. But as I got older and older, I started realizing that they just started getting poorer and poorer and poorer. And it didn't make any sense. I was like, how is it that you can work for 40 years for Chrysler? How is it you can work 25 years in the U.S. military, but as you get older, you're getting poorer and poorer? Whereas the people who don't look like me, who also work those same careers, as they get older, their kids are going to private schools and they're driving foreign cars, and they're basically living in bigger houses. Whereas the people that I grew up around, my grandparents, my aunts and uncles, as they got older, they got poorer and sicker. So I started realizing, okay, there has to be something to this whole money game. And as far as from an educational standpoint, my parents pushed me to push education. So I am a mechanical engineer. And I started realizing that engineering teaches you a lot of good things about how to make money, but doesn't teach you what to do when you actually get it. So as I started making my career and started making more money and stuff like that, I got an MBA as well. And I started noticing that my cousins, my family members, the dudes I used to hoop and play ball with, they were all asking me kind of the same questions. Okay, Chris, what's a Roth IRA? Okay, Chris, what's an index fund? Okay, Chris, what's an ETF? Okay, Chris, should I get into crypto? I kept hearing the same questions after questions and stuff like that. So I was like, you know what? Let me take this. Everybody that I'm helping in different phases of my life, let me take this and actually make a business with it. And that's when I created Financipation. And then one day my wife was like, you're always arguing online with people about stupid stuff. Why don't you start a YouTube channel and just talk finance? I was like, you know what, babe, you got a point. I'm gonna do that. And I guess it's kind of my journey, you know. If you describe who I am, I'm a very athletic guy. I love working out. I love my kids. I love my wife. I love traveling. I do still have a lot of military isms in me. I get up at 4:00 in the morning, and I love pushing the ministry of finance, and I love financial literacy. And I also love teaching people essentially how to make money, how to save money, how to invest money, how to build generational wealth, and how to financially emancipate themselves from poverty. So that's what I do. And I love teaching people, also pushing, working out and taking care of your body. So that's me.
Yeah. Oh, that is so motivating. Okay, first of all, I have to point out the fact that it is very impressive, right? When you meet somebody so ambitious to go into engineering. Also separately, very impressive when you meet somebody that's so ambitious to go and pursue an MBA. But you did both. Like, tell us about that. I mean, that's not easy. And I know there's probably a lot of youth out there who are like, oh, I think I want to go into especially thinking about, the future potential earnings of a certain career or industry. A lot of students will be pressured maybe a bit to go into STEM or to go into medicine or to go, so tell us a little about the decision to do engineering, and then even later kind of going back and doing an MBA on top of that.
Got you. So first off, I'm gonna say this to all my teachers that are listening to this, and all of us are teachers. My father, after he got the U.S. military, he taught for 20 years in the public school system. So I know the stresses you guys deal with. I know the disrespect you get. I know the lack of horrible pay. Yaneli, I read your book. I was blown away how little they pay the New York public school system teachers. And full disclosure, my father actually, when he got out of the army, he said there was not a single year he taught for the 20 years he was in the military. That, I mean, he was teaching, that he didn't take his GI Bill from the army and basically buy his kids dinner, food or lunch or clothes because they were too poor to actually afford it. So I was blown away at how, I hate to say this, how badly America treats its teachers. But for me with engineering, what pushed me to it was this: people told me I couldn't do it. It's just as simple as that. I was, generally speaking, one of the only people who ever looked like me in a lot of the environments that I was in. And I was always told that, to be honest with you, that Black people aren't good at math. And I was like, that's complete nonsense. I'm not going to adhere to that at all. So I literally went into, and I was always good at math because that was the one subject to me, never had a, I don't want to say a racial component, but 1+1 is always going to be 2. 3 times 3 is always going to be 9. Whereas I always found English to be a little subjective, if you will. Math to me was it was a language of God. There's nothing subjective about a calculus equation or the Pythagorean theorem per se. So that's the reason why I went into engineering, because people said I couldn't do it. And I picked mechanical because that was one of the hardest ones. And also I like money because I grew up lower middle class. So engineers, everybody that's listening, to the kids that's going to be listening to this podcast, we get paid extremely well. I would not do this, but I could literally swear at my boss, get fired, and the next hour I would have another job that probably pays me about $20,000 more than I make now.
Wow.
Because unfortunately, America does not produce enough engineers. Every year we have a net negative of about 10,000 engineers. So that means that there are 10,000 jobs every year in America that go unfilled because we don't have enough engineers, which is one of the reasons why we get to hire so many people from like India, certain parts of Africa, and certain parts of Asia, because we don't have enough engineers. So if you go into engineering, particularly electrical engineering or mechanical engineering or chemical or civil engineering, you will always have a job. That's the nuts and bolts of why I picked engineering, because I was always good at math, and I always thought it was really dope that the engineers that built the pyramids 10,000 years later, they're still standing, and the engineers that built the Great Wall of China 5,000 years later, it's still standing. To me, that's just the coolest thing alive. And from a realistic standpoint, nothing is cooler than flying into Miami or flying into Chicago or flying into DC or flying into Philly and seeing all the buildings that I basically helped build and the things that I've worked on. I can't even tell you some of the projects I've worked on. So that's the engineering thing. And the MBA, it went back to me growing up as a little kid, seeing like all my cousins and family members that did it the quote unquote right way. They worked at Chrysler, they learned a trade, they joined the army. And then when they got like 50 years old, they were just poor. And I was like, the math ain't math. And how is it you can work hard your entire life and be poor? So I started realizing it has to be more than how much money you make. You must be how you invest your money, must be about the stocks, must be about starting businesses, property, land, something. So that's why I got the MBA at night and went to grad school and got that at night.
That is so interesting. Okay, so now you see in the chat here for the live event that there are teachers from all across the country. We got the East Coast, we got New York, we have Philly schools, we have Arizona, we have Los Angeles. So we have so many different areas represented, but more importantly, the different types of financial courses that these teachers are instructing for their students. This can range from financial literacy, from financial algebra, life skills and careers, so many different types of classes, economics, right? That teach students about financial education in general. I'm curious about your upbringing and when you were in school. Did you ever learn about money management or personal finance in school? Was there anything even remotely close to a financial literacy education, or was it just what you observed at home?
It was nothing close to it. Even when I was in grad school, I was blown away at how little they taught about, I learned how to do, how to make a millionaire a billionaire. I learned how to do corporate finance. I learned macroeconomics. I learned all that kind of stuff. But as far as personal finance, as far as how you can make a person who makes $50,000 turn them into a millionaire in 20 years, they don't teach that kind of stuff in the school system. I kind of learned that through the School of Hard Knocks and just kind of researching it on my own. So to all the teachers that are teaching this stuff to the high school and middle schoolers today, I want to say thank you, because I didn't learn that. I picked it up just because I was always kind of a go-getter to some extent, and I read books, but and my parents were always big into, okay, read this book. But to me, that's not, personal finance is something we should be teaching all across America, in every high school and every middle school, even to some extent every elementary school, because kids at that age can get it. And I don't know why it's not pushed the way that it should, it really isn't.
Oh, listen, I agree with you. Part of the work that I do so we have an affiliated organization with NGPF. It's an affiliate called the Mission 2030 Fund. And through that organization, we actually get to work state by state by state, helping lawmakers, the senators and the representatives on education committees in different states to file bills that will say, hey, let's change the requirements for graduation and make sure that they do include financial literacy. And we've had so much success with that. Like just a couple of years ago in 2021, there were only 8 states that required personal finance for a semester. And now in 2025, at the beginning of this year, there are 26 states. So we've more than tripled the number of states that have a requirement of a semester-long class dedicated to personal finance in just a handful of years. But we're still working on more. You know, this year there's active legislation in Kentucky, in North Dakota, in Texas, in New Jersey, in Colorado. So there's still a lot of room for growth, and more states are going to start adding this, especially at the high school level, because that's when you make a lot of big decisions. Should I go to college? How am I going to pay for it? Should I take out loans? Should I get a car? Like all these different big decisions happen at that age. So I hear you. And I think it is so, so important. But a lot of people, they don't get it in the school system. And honestly, even all the adults now that already graduated out of school will say, oh yeah, like that's a good thing. I love what you're doing for the high school kids, but what about us? We already out and we didn't get it. So that's where you come in. A lot of the work that you're doing now, working with adults, working with financial professionals, or not financial professionals, but working professionals, and really helping with coaching people and educating them, empowering them. So how did you kind of make the decision? You know what? I'm gonna work on something that helps other people, even though you work full time as an engineer. You're going to do this outside and you're working out and you're up early and you have a wife and kids and all this stuff. And so making the decision, like initially what struck that moment of inspiration for you, and then how did you ultimately end up on like deciding Financipation was going to be that business for you and that company?
Got you. Well, first of all, I gotta give a shout out to my wife, because I never would have started Financipation if it was not for her. So, and I got a good woman. So like, she's like, Chris, I'll handle the kids. Just give me this amount of time and take care of stuff outside the house. I'll take care of the kids. If I didn't marry the right woman, I would not be able to do Financipation. I'll just cut it right to the chase about that. But the way that I've always kind of done it, Yaneli, is that I looked at you want to have a legacy in life. And when I was thinking about different businesses that I wanted to start, there was about 4 or 5 different businesses that I wanted to start. And I guess what it boiled down to it about financial literacy was that I don't care what color you are, I don't care what God you pray to, I don't care what your gender is. Everybody wants to be comfortable financially. I've literally seen women stop dating abusive men when they realize when they basically figure out their finances. I've seen guys break up with abusive women when they realize, they understand how finances work. I've seen personally in my own life, as well as my friends and colleagues, people will not let an ignorant boss talk to them a certain kind of way when they understand, wait a minute, if I invest 15% of my income into this index fund or into this REIT or into this stock, and I do this for 5 or 10 years, I'm gonna have this amount of money. So why am I tolerating this stuff from this dude when I can get another job somewhere else? So it's a certain freedom that comes with financial literacy. So I realized all different businesses that I can start, whether I started a personal training business, I started other businesses as well. I like financial literacy because it was the one business I could think of that everyone in the world can do better on. And like I said, I had been doing it pretty much on and off for like 20 years. There's some family members, guys I used to hoop and play ball with, dudes I used to lift weights with, guys I box with. And then my wife was like, Chris, why don't you take this to the rest of the world? Instead of just doing one-on-ones with people, you should start a YouTube channel and do that. And that's kind of what did it. And then lastly, another story as well. About 5 years ago, somebody invited me to be on a relationship dating panel. And this young lady had been doing her channel for a couple of years. So anyway, she invited me onto it, and when I came on, that was the highest rated show she ever had. So I had people reach out to me and say, dude, if you've never considered getting into podcasting, you should get into it. I was just like, man, I never crossed my mind. And then a couple of months after that, an engineer asked me to come on their podcast and talk engineering. That was also the highest rated show she ever had. So after those two, and it was the same thing. People were like, dude, if you've never considered getting into podcasting, you should do it. So at that point, it was just like, okay, maybe it's a sign from upstairs or something. Okay, if my wife is saying I should do it, if I know I got the knowledge, if I know I got the academic pedigree, I guess if I quote unquote look the part, why would I not want to get into YouTube and podcasting? So that's basically what did it, Yaneli. And then lastly, I truly believe that at the end of the day, we need to, as men and as women, we need to basically do things to prepare our kids for the next generation so they have it better than we did. And I push entrepreneurship. This is a very easy business to pass on to my sons when they get old enough to start doing their own version of Financipation. So that's basically what it kind of boils down to, okay?
That's amazing that not only are you thinking about like what you enjoy and what your skill set and talents allow you to do well, but that you're already thinking about passing a bit your business down to the next generation. Like most people are just trying to figure out what can I do to make some money on the side to help me, come up and generate some additional income. But you're thinking, how can I create something that then I can pass on to my children? Like that's amazing. And I really do think that comes from the certain level of dedication that you've put towards studying finances for yourself and actually studying wealth building, because then you really start to think on that next level beyond us and beyond our lifetimes, really thinking about generations of wealth and generational wealth. Okay, so now I have a question, because I do feel like some people might listen to you and go like, oh, nah, Christopher, come on, he's the exception. He's the exception. Like, it's not very realistic for the average person who's not a math genius, who's not an MBA engineer and all this, to also have a business on the side, a podcast, to also do all these things in addition to work. And so I kind of want you to just like break it down in terms of like, this is feasible, right? And you want to explain to people like, hey, yes, it can sound intimidating because there's a lot going on. But if we break it down, maybe the way that you tackle the tasks, the projects, maybe even breaking down like the typical day, how you actually are able to manage. Because I do feel like sometimes people, especially younger people, can be a little intimidated going, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to juggle all of that. Like, it's just not possible. It's like, no, it is. And there's many, many people doing it. Christopher's one example. So give us a little bit of like a walkthrough. Like, how do you manage to make it feasible to have your full-time job, also a podcast, also the business where you do coaching, and also enjoy your life and make time for working out, your kids and your wife?
Got you. First off, you have to keep what's important. I'm in a career where a lot of men lose their families because they chase the proverbial bag. In the industry that I work in, you can make a very large amount of money by building billion-dollar, let's say, data centers for Pandora or Microsoft. So I'm in an industry where a lot of men end up losing their family. I always told any company I ever hire, look, my wife is my boss, and I'm not going to lose my family. And that's one of the first conversations I have with the company. So because of that, I keep everything in perspective. There are times my wife says, Chris, you're working too much. You need to get off the computer. You need to stop podcasting. And I do that. My kids, they'll say, Daddy, you don't play with us enough. So it's a balance. But what I've learned to do is this, Yaneli. First off, I said earlier, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to work out. Actually, I get up at 3:30 in the morning to work out. So the reason why I do that is because when I was getting up at 5 a.m., I didn't have the time to work out and go to the gym. So I said, okay, let me back this thing up a little bit and figure out how I can do that. So find out what's priority in your life, and then figure out a way to do it. Because at the end of the day, you always find a way to make time for what's important. So me personally, I actually write down, literally old school, I write down in a journal, okay, what do I need to accomplish today or this week? And by doing that, I basically like 10 different things. So by doing that, it allows me to say, okay, I hit this. This is what I need to do this. This is how much time it's gonna take me to do this. This is how much time it's gonna take me to do this. And I have systems in place to essentially make my life a lot more efficient. As far as how do I put it all in one day, what I do is I figure out how much time is it going to take me to do task A and then move on to task B, and how can I save time in order to move to task C. And I set those systems up in place for everything. So in corporate America, for instance, if it takes me an hour to do a task, I figure out ways to do it in 45 minutes. Then I figure out ways to do it in 40 minutes, then in 35 minutes, then 25 minutes. And you figure out ways to be more efficient. My drives to work, I figure out, just like all of us do in this chat, what's the most efficient way to get to work and to and from work. I figure out what can I do from home and what can I do at work. As far as Financipation is concerned, I'm old school in this respect. Back in the day, people used to always carry notebooks everywhere. They were like artists and designers. They would carry notebooks with them. Why? Because as soon as a song pops in your brain, or a rap lyric, or as soon as some kind of inspirational thing pops in your brain, you write that thing down. Well, I do the same thing on my phone. So right now I have about 700 podcast episodes I have never filmed in my phone. And I do that because whenever I'm doing anything, whether I'm hitting a heavy bag, whether I'm boxing, whether I'm lifting weights, whether I'm driving, as soon as something comes to my brain about that, this would be a really good podcast to do, I write it down. And by doing that, I literally never run out of content. And it's the same thing in regards to my personal life as well. If my wife says, okay, it's your night to cook dinner, I have already, before she even says that, 2 or 3 weekends prior to that, I've already basically bought the groceries. I know exactly what I'm going to make. So when she has that conversation with me, it's ready to go as far as from a dinner perspective. So that's what I mean. I create systems to make my life as efficiently as possible. And then, like I say, sometimes, Yaneli, I collapse and I say, okay, I'm not doing this today. I'm not working out. I'm just gonna chill and go to sleep and just play with my kids. So it's a balance that you kind of have to make, and it's a challenge, but you have to put it in. It's worth it. It's worth it.
Yeah. Okay. So a couple things I heard from that I really do think are takeaways for everybody, regardless if you're not trying to juggle a bunch of businesses or if you're not trying to juggle a bunch of projects or if you are. And one was, don't be afraid to go old school and write things down. I feel like that to me has been a huge thing. I definitely have my digital things, my calendar is digital. So of course I use my Google Calendar for everything and I have it on my phone and on my laptop. But when it comes to things that I need to do or brainstorming or like idea generating, I'm just like you. I have my places where I write it down, and then I have a note in my phone where I have so many different notes of goals, ideas. Sometimes I remember a random dream that I had and I'm just like, wait, why am I remembering this dream? Let me write this down, because it comes to another creative project later where I'll call back to that or use that for inspiration. So I'm just like you. I'm always trying to capture everything, write it down. And sometimes if I'm on the go and I can't like write it down, I'll actually make a voice recording note just so I want to capture, I want to document, what am I thinking? What, ideas coming to me right now? And that is so huge. But don't be afraid to go old school. Everything doesn't have to be all technology, fancy, savvy today. Of course, with AI and everything, we feel so much pressure to use the highest tech things. But listen, just jotting down what you're doing, your goals, your visions, your ideas, is so, so, so critical, because then you constantly have it to go back to it. And it's, if it's tactile, especially. And then the second thing that you talked about was balance. Like that is so important, because we sometimes, especially this culture, I feel like now the culture around social media, especially for this young generation, is like, if you're not a boss, a girl boss, or like going hard, it's like if you're not a boss, then you're slacking, and you're not your own boss. If you're not a millionaire by 22 years old, what are you doing? And, it's just a little excessive. I find that on social media, there is this pressure that, I don't know about you, but I definitely did not feel that pressure when I was growing up. I felt like the advice I was getting was just like, enjoy this and worry about things that are, when you're kind of getting closer to that, when it's up next in your life. So what would you say about like tips that you could give, especially teens today, but also teachers, because they work with teens every day, who are seeing this like messaging coming at them, like work harder, be, more ambitious. You're supposed to be a millionaire by 21 years old, and you're supposed to have 3 businesses, and you're supposed to be trading, and you're supposed to own real estate. And if not, like you're the slacker. And it's kind of, I think it can become toxic for so many young people. It leads to anxiety, it leads to depression, the comparison trap, we could go on and on. But any tips that you have for navigating that, especially given so many different social media platforms today?
First off, I would say I've always thought this social media to some extent is a cesspool of like just nonsense. So obviously we're both content creators. So I have a TikTok page. I have a Twitter account. I have a Blue Sky account. I have Facebook. I have all that stuff because I have to. But when I see the kind of stuff that is being peddled to the next generation, I feel a little sorry for them. I may sound a little old when I say this, but Facebook didn't exist until I didn't get on Facebook until I was 19. That was when I first got on Facebook. And I feel kind of blessed about that, because I got to see the world before it became social media. And what I would tell anybody is that, particularly to the women, I'll talk to them first about this. Half these images that you see of these girls on Facebook, on Instagram, this stuff isn't real, period. I modeled for a little bit when I was a little younger. And I was blown away at some of the women that were like walking to the modeling studios with us, how they looked. And then an hour later when they came like, made it be like, whoa, is that the same person? Because it's a facade, it's not real. And social media is the same way when it comes like filters and how people can change their image and the whole AI thing, and then other accounts that are kind of popping up. To the women, I'll say, don't try to compare yourself to something that's not real, that doesn't exist, because half these people don't look like that. And to the dudes, where you're seeing all guys like just basically flashing money and making it rain and how much money they got and stuff like that, ignore that stuff. Like literally get on your journey and work your journey, and work it slowly, but work it surely. The tortoise eventually beat the hare, and there's a reason for that, because he was slow and steady. And my advice I would give anybody is that whatever you're doing, try to be the best at it at that time period. So if you're playing basketball, try to be the best at that time period. When you're in the classroom, try to be the best at that time period. When you're in school and you're studying, try to be the best that you possibly can at that time period. And then eventually what's going to happen is you're going to take that excellence into everything else that you do, whether it's you're talking to a girl, whether it's you're playing a sport, whether it's you're investing your money, whether it's you're doing research to figure out how to invest what you need to invest. Whatever you're doing, try to be the best that you possibly can. And the only person you should ever compare yourself to is yourself. Yaneli, you and I are both content creators. If you're like me, sometimes you wake up and say, oh man, my stuff is horrible. I don't know what I'm doing. It's terrible. What I'm putting out here is garbage. I'm not getting the subscribers that I want. I think I should be here and I'm only here. But when you sit back and think about it, you say, okay, Chris, were you a better person today than you were yesterday? Yeah. Are you a better engineer today than you were yesterday? Yeah. Are you a better financial investor today? Yeah. Okay, cool. So stop comparing yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself. And if you do that, and you do this consistently over time, you are going to be absolutely amazed at the places you're going to go and the places you're going to be. And that's the advice I'll give today's generation. Don't worry about the fast money. Don't worry about the fast cars. Don't worry about all that stuff. If you get educated and take care of your body, you're going to get all those things. It may not happen as quickly as you want it, but I can promise you this: when it does happen, it's going to be way better than you ever thought. So yeah.
I love that. I love the point that you made about slow and steady, because, even earlier when you had mentioned that when you got on your own financial journey, you had to kind of come to understand that it's a slow process. And also that you learned from what you saw with your own family, with your own grandparents, that, it seems like everybody's doing so well, right? It seems like they have all these boxes checked. They own their home. They have a nice car. They make all this money. And then it comes crashing down. And you learned some fundamental principles that kind of woke you up to this world of how to do money correctly. That kind of you realize like, oh, okay, this is what they did wrong. And a big piece of that is the slow and steady piece of wealth building. So tell us a little bit about that. When you're working with, coaching clients, or when you're talking on your podcast about how you have learned and implemented your own investing fundamentals and strategies, what are those like building blocks that you always say, these are the core things, this is what matters the most, forget all the noise online about penny stocks and options and all that stuff, Forex trading, and focus on this instead? What is that for you, those building blocks?
Got you. To me, the building blocks are very simple, Yaneli. Find a career that pays you a good salary, spend significantly less money than you make. So basically only spend about 70 cents out of every dollar that you make. And so live on 70% of what you make, and then try to invest roughly 25 to 30% of all the money that you make. And if you do those things, basically cut your spending, make as much money as possible, and invest as much money as you possibly can, you're going to eventually one day be wealthy. And this is me coming from an MBA perspective. But when I was in grad school, I worked with guys who work on Wall Street now. They work about 100 to 120 hours a week. I work about 50 to 60 hours a week. But these guys spend about 2,000 to 3,000, about 4,000 to 5,000 hours a year, trying to beat the stock market. I spend 1 hour a year basically matching the stock market. And studies show that people, I know you know where I'm going with this, Yaneli, because you do this you talk about this in your book. People that basically buy low cost total stock market index funds, we basically, that match the market, we essentially beat my MBA graduate, Wall Street worker type guys who basically try to beat the stock market 96% of the time over a 15-year period. And on top of that, it compounds. Last year, my index funds were compounding at 23%. But over the last 50 years, they've averaged about 10 to 11%. Whereas people that use hedge fund managers, financial planners, like that, they only average about 5 to 6% over the same time period. So in other words, people that spend 5,000 hours a year trying to beat the stock market only average about 6%, or only average about 5% rather. Whereas people like you and me, Yaneli, basically invest in the total stock market index funds, the S&P 500, we average about 11 to 12% over the same time period. And we only spend 1 hour a year literally investing what we go into. So that's my personal investment strategy. That's what I do. And I have found it has worked extremely well for my family and I. And that's just from a compounding, that's just from an interest perspective. When you factor in the fact that when you buy a stock and you hold it for decades, and this goes back into the whole, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. When you buy a stock and hold it for decades, you're not buying it and selling it. You don't get hit with the capital gains taxes on it either. And then on top of that, typically speaking, low cost index funds, they have a significantly lower expense ratio than funds that are actively managed. So as a result of that, in English, that means this: you're paying vastly more money for a vastly more inferior product if you go with a financial planner, if you're trying to invest into the stock market. But if you invest a slow and steady way, and you invest into total stock market index funds, or index funds that track the S&P 500, or index funds nowadays that are tracking like data centers and things like that, you are almost guaranteed to make a lot more money over the long haul, that is. So what I always tell a lot of investors is that, look, if you want quick money, don't come to Financipation. If you want fast money, don't come to me. I don't push that stuff. I'm going to teach you how to build wealth slowly, and I'm going to teach you how to build wealth correctly. It's going to legally minimize your taxes. You're not going to spend a lot of money paying some financial advisor who's going to most likely take your money, and you're going to see consistent growth considerably over time. And another thing I always tell people is this: you may not see a lot of growth the first $5,000 or $10,000, or the first $50,000, or the first $100,000. When you start getting to like that 250 range, you're going to be blown away at how that compound interest keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. That's one thing. Another thing too, that I love is this. If I'm explaining this to like a 15 or a 16-year-old kid, they understand that. If I start talking like options trading and penny stocks and crypto to some extent and Forex trading and stuff like that, it's a lot more complicated. And the individuals who do that, it's kind of like being an amateur basketball player trying to step on the court with Steph Curry or LeBron James. Like literally, you are out of your league if you try to play in that world. So I tell a lot of people, look, if you, like I said, to me, index funds have worked very well for me. Exchange traded funds that track the total stock market, they've done very well for me. International real estate has done very well for me. And the last thing I'll say is this: everybody should start a business, period. Especially if you're a teacher or you're a 9-to-5, you start a business, because it's going to make you a vastly better employee. It's going to make you a vastly better person. So that's my investment strategy. That has worked well for me and myself and my wife and my family. So yeah.
Interesting. So we got number one, focus on a career that will allow you to get a high earning potential. So if you're in high school, if you're in college now listening to this, you have time to think, okay, what are the career paths that get me a little excited, at least a little bit passionate, and also have high earning potential? Let me do some research. Let me go ahead and look that up, instead of just like in my case, right? When I was growing up, my parents basically said to us, just do really well in school and either become a doctor, a lawyer, a business person, go get a nice corporate job. Those were the options. And I graduated right during the Great Recession. It was very difficult to get a job like that. Nobody was hiring. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to go into teaching, because they're hiring teachers left and right constantly. So I became a teacher, and I loved the work, right? And it was so hard. It taught me so many skills that I feel like if I was not a teacher, I never would have gotten those skills. But I knew, like, if I'm thinking about high earning potential, I'm going to either have to have a business on top of teaching, which is very much possible. I know a lot of teachers who are also, have their side hustles, their businesses on the side, or they run summer events and summer programming and make money over the summer. But I just knew, I was like, okay, I never really gave it thought. I just chose teaching because it was available to me during a downturn in the economic, in the workforce. But I really wish that I had actually given some thought to, like, okay, what are the career fields where there's high earning potential? I did not have any guidance on that. So I really think that step one was a really great one. Two, you said live on 70% of what you earn, which means you have to cut down your spending and get really serious about your budget. And then three, invest the other 30%, invest the rest, and do it in a very savvy way, meaning legally lowering your taxes by using tax advantage accounts and other efficient tax strategies, investment funds that have low fees, right? Like you said, index funds, also ETFs are great. And then you said to have a business as well. So entrepreneurial ventures is something that you recommend to everyone. Now, you mentioned grow slowly. I'm with you on this, and you read my investing chapter in my book, so you already know I'm all about the slow growth of index investing. That has definitely been my approach as well. However, when I talk to some of my, like my siblings or my younger cousins, my little brother, especially, he's in his 20s, he's almost going to be 30, and he gets so frustrated with me because he's like, I don't make a high income, and I have a kid, and my life is a little different from yours. And so I don't have a lot of disposable income to invest. And so if I'm just getting that 10%, that's going to take forever for me to actually be able to enjoy the fruits of my labor and have the lifestyle that I want for myself and my daughter. And I just tell him, I know that you're impatient, but man, it's what you said, right? It's the tortoise beats the hare. It's the slow and steady. But is there anything else that you say to your coaching clients, or that you would recommend that I can say to my brother or to some of my younger cousins? Because I do feel like they're constantly saying, oh, I hear you, but that's too long to wait. I don't have that kind of, delayed gratification. And especially this is true for a lot of the teenagers who are sitting in the financial literacy education classrooms of so many of the educators in the NGPF community, where they have the teacher up front saying ETFs and index funds, and they're sitting in the class like crypto and Forex. So like, is there anything else that you think could help maybe rewire their thinking and help them see that, yeah, that seems hot and quick money and all that, but trust me, this way over here is tried and true.
Got you. So if I'm talking to a group of high school kids and everything, it's particular with the Forex and the crypto thing, I just tell them straight up, the vast majority of people who are investing into that stuff are going to lose money over that same 5 to 10 year period that you say you want to make your money. So if you want to look purely play the numbers game, most people that invest into crypto and the Forex, they lose significantly more money than they make. That's just a statistical reality. Whereas people that invest the way me and you do, Yaneli, which is slow and steady and stuff like that, we make money, statistically speaking, literally almost 900% of the time over the same 5 to 10 year period. That's the first thing. Secondly, if I'm talking to a bunch of dudes, particularly like guys in their early 20s, I'd say straight up, bro, look, man, you only work how many 40 hours a week? Okay, cool. Go get a construction job then. All right, cool. I mean, go get another job. Go start a business. I mean, right now, I talked about engineering, they're hiring. I spent some time in my life in construction, breaking concrete and working on roofs in Miami. That was amazing work. I'll say it that way. Okay. Extremely hard. But you know what, though? Those people get paid insanely well. And if you got a pulse and you want to do blue collar, half the electricians that I know make more than electrical engineers that I know. And every steam fitter that I know makes more than the mechanical engineers that I know. It's hard work, but you can get paid a lot. So if it's a guy talking that thing about, okay, I want to make money in 10 years, I'm like, all right, cool, go get another job then. Or go start, or even better yet, go start a business. I was actually mentoring, I actually had a one-on-one with a young lady about 3 years ago, attractive girl, and she was like, I only make like $55 or $60,000 as a paralegal. What should I do, Chris? I was just like, have you ever considered being a cocktail waitress at a very upscale spot like in Midtown Miami? And she ended up doing that on Friday nights and Saturday nights, 3 weekends a month, and was making like twice her salary doing that just off of tips alone. So as a result, 90% of the money she made into her side hustle into index funds and ETFs, just like I taught her to do. And that girl is doing extremely well 5 years later. So whenever people start saying, okay, Chris, I like what you're saying about I'm going to get a 10 to 12% or a 20% return on my money and stuff like that, but I want to make money faster. I'm like, all right, cool. If that's really what you want to do, why don't you start a business or why don't you get a second job? And some people will listen to it, some people don't. That's kind of how I look at it, Then lastly, like I said, I come from a very strong math background. So for me, the laws of compound interest, just understanding the way statistics works, it always made sense to me that I would rather be in a position where I had a 96% chance of making more money than that person because I invested slow and steady than trying to go the fast route. That worked for me. It doesn't work for everybody. For other people, I would say get another job in science, technology, engineering, math, healthcare, law, or finance, or learn a trade. And then you can make as much money as possible with a side hustle. So that's how I would answer that question. And then invest, once again, 70 to 80% of that money making your side hustle into your Roth IRA, into your SEP IRA, into your HSA accounts, into your brokerage accounts, and then just watch the money just compound and grow.
Yes, I love that. I do feel like sometimes the like go hard or go home vibe is off on social media, but I think it's because it's misguided. It's focusing on making millions now versus what you're saying is put in the work now. And then you can reap the rewards of all the time and compounding of the money later so that you can enjoy those fruits of your labor. And the emphasis is the long term, even though you're saying like, now, put in the work now, put in the hours now, work the 2 jobs now, be a cocktail waitress, be a hostess at a very nice restaurant, do what you have to do, but understanding that it's because in the future, you won't have to sacrifice like that anymore versus the option that, you talked about on the personal level for you that you saw your grandparents make, which was, yeah, sure, have a high income now and live real nice and get all the nice things, but eventually it will all come crashing down. And then later on, you're struggling financially because you didn't really put the building blocks early on. So, I really do think that kind of flips the script a little bit. It's like turning the idea on its head of like, stop trying to make all this money right now, focus on putting in the energy, the time, the effort now, because that's how you guarantee yourself that the money will come versus taking the risk that maybe the money will come because you're over here trading or doing this and that and taking risks and speculating. And it's like, there's no guarantee there. But if you put in the time, you put in the hours, pretty much a guarantee, and it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and then eventually you get to a point where the compound interest just starts to literally take over. Like I said, it may take you a while to go from like 0 to 100,000 in your retirement portfolio. When you get to about 250, you start saying, okay, it took me, I don't know, let's say 7 years, let's say 10 years to go from 0 to 100K, but you go from like 250 to 350 in like 1 year.
Yeah.
So it's just like once the compound interest thing starts kind of kicking in, you really start to basically pick up, and that's the first thing. And secondly, too, a lot of times what happens is this: a person will start their investment journey, their financipation journey, and start investing, let's say 3%, and then they get a raise, and they invest 7%. Then they get another raise, they invest 15%. Then they get married, they can start investing 25%, and that hasn't really changed. The only difference is now they have less debt. And also on top of it, they have a partner who's willing to work with them. So instead of them only investing 10% of their income, they're putting it together. Now they can invest 25% of their income. And what happens is it starts to slowly but surely build itself up. And that's that I've seen. Another thing too, I find, is this happened with me professionally. When I got my money and stacking it and trying to basically figure out ways to build generational wealth, I got better at my career. And I got better at my career because I took that same dedication that I was applying to my career, and it applied to my finances and stuff like that. And that's when I start to take off. So the slow and steady, people that don't like the slow and steady crowd, what I find is that typically with us, we get to where we want to be faster than the ones who just want to go hard and do a lot of like very risky investments and not understand what they're doing. I've seen that literally decade after decade.
Yeah, that is such a great point. And, in terms of the compounding thing, yes, it takes time, but, and then sometimes I also think the fear takes over, or like a little bit of like the scarcity mindset where they think, well, the stock market is eventually going to crash, or I'm going to lose all my money or something like that. But the more you learn about the stock market and the history of the stock market and how the patterns and the trends, the more you understand that there's security more often than there are downturns and economic, market crashes, right? And so one quick example, right? I just Googled real quick. How many times did the S&P 500 hit a record high in 2024?
Yep.
The S&P 500 hit 57, almost 60 times, 57 different record highs of the stock market in 2024, which means it was the highest it's ever been in the entire history of the stock market, 57 different times in 2024. And now that it's early 2025, another record high, literally like this week, the S&P 500 hit a new record high. So it's like every time you don't start investing because of the fear, because of the doubt, because a crash is coming, because you convinced yourself of whatever excuse or whatever reason has been blocking you from starting, another record high, and you weren't there to ride that wave up. You were not on the roller coaster when it went up high. So you cannot benefit from those gains. And so I really do think it's so important for young people to recognize time is on your side. So if you start, even with fractional shares nowadays, you could buy $1 worth of stock. You could buy $1 worth of an index fund. So there's very little barriers to entry. Like there used to be so many more barriers. Now there's really not that many barriers. There's just a lot of excuses. So I really do think that what you're saying is spot on about the compounding part and the waiting it out. Is definitely a great point. I want to make sure I leave time for educators who have questions. As y'all can see, and here, if you're listening to the podcast, Christopher is so ambitious, so inspirational. His story is motivational, but also just his wisdom in terms of the different things that he has pursued and achieved is incredible. So if you have any specific questions that you want to ask Christopher before we wrap up, either about his work with Financipation, his goals, his tips, go ahead and put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask him directly since you're here live. All right, we got one in the chat from Mr. Mike Twig. Checking out your YouTube channel, which of the videos that you have would you most want or recommend that a class of high school students should watch?
Got you. I got one called Index Funds. Let me actually look it up what the actual title is. There's actually a few. If you have a group of minority students, primarily in your high school, I would tell them to check out Blacks Are Not Poor series. I've got 2 podcasts already with that one. I got the 3rd one coming up. And I know growing up my whole life, I was told that if you want to be successful as a Black male, you gotta rap, or you gotta play basketball or play football. And that's complete garbage. There's absolutely no truth to it at all. And I basically use numbers and statistics to basically talk about how that's just a historical lie that's not based in any kind of reality. And in part 2 of that series, I talk about the 10 wealthiest Black men and women in the world, and 70% of them have nothing to do with entertainment or hip hop or music at all.
There's a request here from Miss Kimberly Jones. Would you be willing to create a special playlist for high school students on your channel?
Absolutely. That's actually a great idea. I will go
I
ahead.
do think that's a great idea. I'm about to steal that one from my channel too.
To answer your question, the call how to become a multimillionaire with index funds. Check that one out. That's a really good one. And I think I kind of go into detail about there's different ways you can do that. Another one too, I wouldn't, this one's a little, I'm gonna say it's hard for high school students, but you have to be in a different phase of your life to go to it. But it's one of my most proud Financipation videos. It's called the Rockefeller Trust 101. And in that one, I systematically break down how John Rockefeller has literally set up his great grandkids for generational just wealth, literally for eternity, because of something he created called an irrevocable trust, and how he set that thing up. So that's something I'm currently in the process of creating for my kids. It's a little more, you have to be a little wealthier to do it just because of how much it actually financially costs to set up a irrevocable trust. That's another podcast that I'm very proud about. Another one I'm very proud about is how men can level up. I have a podcast right there where I'm specifically talking to a guy who said that his brother, his words not mine, was a complete loser, and how does he get him out of that mindset. So I basically say, okay, you're a 30-year-old man, you live home with your mom, you have no skills, you have no girlfriend, and you don't like your life. This is systematically how you get out of that. And I've had a lot of people reach out to say they like that video because it gave them motivation to want to do better. So
wow. You laid out the game plan, what you would do to get out of that situation yourself.
Exactly.
Love that. That's dope. Okay, we have a question here in the chat, which I think is a really good one. How are you going to be working with your children to help them become financially independent and confident in their own right?
Got you. So there's little things you can do at every age group. So right now I have a 3-year-old and I have a 11-month-old. So they're still kind of young, but things that I've already started doing with my 3-year-old, I'll say, okay, daddy can give you 5 Skittles right now. So daddy can give you a bag. Daddy can give you 3 Skittles right now. Or I can give you the entire bag. If I give you the entire bag right now, I'm going to give you 2 bags of Skittles. I mean, you're not going to get 2 bags of Skittles. If I give you 3 Skittles right now, I'll give you 2 bags of Skittles after tomorrow morning. And at that point, I'm already teaching my son, Christopher, more or less delayed gratification. That's one thing. Secondly, I'll say this to every parent that's listening. When my kids were born, I put $1,000 into a UTMA, a Uniform Transfer to Minor Act. It's basically like a brokerage account for children. So they automatic, when they turn 18, they're going to have 18 years of compounding interest that they're going to be able to use on anything that they want. So that's something I'm doing. And as they get older, when I was younger, I didn't say this earlier. Like I said, I grew up somewhat lower middle class. I sold candy to basically buy my Jordans, buy my Timbs, buy my jerseys and stuff like that. So I was always an entrepreneur and a hustler. So I'm gonna make sure my sons, same thing. I'm gonna make sure they're doing legal entrepreneurship and legal hustles essentially to make money. And then as they get older, I'm having them reading books like The Total Money Maker. I'm having them reading books like Scholarships, The Golden Road to Free Money. I'm having them read books like Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. I'm having them read books like Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins, The Richest Man in Babylon. I'm gonna have them doing book reports about that kind of stuff, about history. And I also have them reading books about like Garrett Morgan and Charles Drew and great Black history people as well. So that's how I plan on teaching my sons financial literacy. I want them to get worth of knowledge before they turn 18. That's the plan.
That's right. That is amazing. All right, you all, we have a couple minutes left, and then I'm going to drop the survey in the chat. So if you have a question that hasn't been answered, or you're curious, you want Christopher to address something, let us know in the chat or unmute yourself and ask. Before you exit the Zoom today, you definitely want to make sure that you submit the survey to us so that you can get credit for this hour of time with us on this professional development. So I'll drop that survey shortly, the link for that in the chat in a bit. But yeah, while we have another couple minutes here, if there's any other questions, this has been so incredible for me to host you and have you on, just like I'm on fire. Like now I'm like, all right, I got to double down. I got to work harder because I'm so motivated. And I really think that it's going to translate to students as well. So thank you so much, Christopher, for making time and out of your busy schedule to spend an hour with us to share your wisdom and your nuggets and your brilliance. Honestly, it's all brilliant. Thank you.
Thank God for it. Thank God for it. One last thing, I would like to say as well to all the people that are listening, particularly my high school kids, take care of your body, okay? People always underestimate. When I tell people my age, they're always shocked when I tell them. Make sure you take care of your body. Always maintain your temple. God gives you one body, so take care of it. Work out, drink a lot of water, eat healthy. Your body and your mind are your 2 vessels that you use to transverse this life. And the healthier you are, the easier it is to make money. The longer you can work, the less you call in sick, the more you can be there for your partner and for your kids. If you die of a heart attack at 40 years old, you make $100,000 a year. that in the retirement age of 65, you just cost your family $2.5 million because you died 25 years prematurely. So take care of your body. That's another thing I'll tell you as well.
Wow.
Health.
I've never even heard it framed that way, but that's such a hot take. Yes, health is wealth in the chat. Love it. Okay, survey's coming in a minute, but we had a couple other questions that I wanted to see if we could get to. Question 1, do you have a book? And question 2, do you have 529 plans for your kiddos?
Yes, I do. I have, I'll talk about my book. If you go to Amazon, you can purchase called Scholarships, The Golden Road to Free Money. Or you can purchase them on Amazon. Yaneli, I'm going to have to talk to you because you have definitely changed your generation tree by that amazing book that you wrote. So I got to figure out how to market my book the same way that you have. It's called Scholarships, The Golden Road to Free Money. Just so you know, I went to undergrad for free. I talk about my entire journey about how I basically paid for engineering and got my undergraduate degree for free. Yes, I have a 529 for both of my kids and also have a UTMA for both of my kids. And it's a specific reason why I have both a 529 and a UTMA. There's pros and cons to both. One is more tax efficient than the other. One is better for investing if you're into like ETFs and index funds and REITs. So I have both for both of my boys. So yeah.
Amazing. Yes. Thank you for the shout out about the book. It's such a labor of love. Honestly, all this work that we do that's creative, your podcast, the videos, the book, it is a labor of love for sure. I feel like we have to have you back on to talk about scholarships another time, because that is such a topic that teachers and students definitely want to dive into. I feel like it's like the students that I've met and talked to who want to get scholarships feel so defeated. They feel like it's not realistic for them to get the money that they need for school. And they just, they feel so disillusioned with the idea of paying for college because it's getting so expensive. So we'll do another session. We'll have a part 2. We'll bring you back to talk about your book, to talk about scholarships, and talk about your tips for students today who are seeking funding so that they don't have to go into a ton of debt to go to college. So I love that so much. Yes, please. Can we have him back? You're popular.
I would love to be back. Thank you, Yaneli. I would love to come back.
Of course.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, you all, that's the wrap for our session time. Here is the survey link in the chat. And once again, thank you so much, Christopher. This was so incredible. I know that there's going to be so many nuggets here that, teachers can take for themselves and also bring back to their classrooms and share with their students. So we really appreciate you joining us for the speaker series. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I'm looking forward to coming back. Definitely.
Yes. All right, folks, I'm going to send a follow-up email to you all. When you complete that survey, you're good to go, but keep an eye on your inbox. I'll send you a few different resources that Christopher mentioned in our conversation today, as well as a link to his website and his book in case you want to support his work. And if you have any other questions or any issues or, queries, you can just respond to me directly in that email that I've sent to you after the event today. And make sure that you submit that survey before you exit the Zoom right now, because that's how you're going to get credit. And that's how you're going to make sure that you're on the list to get the follow-up email from me. Thank you all so much for making time this afternoon or this evening. I know you are all super busy grading and planning and teaching, but making time to join us at these events it means so much to us at NGPF. So we really are thankful to have you joining us and to continue being part of the community. So have an incredible rest of your Thursday. Enjoy the upcoming weekend, and we'll see you back soon for another virtual PD event soon.
Thank you, Nelly. Thank you.
Thank you.